Welcome to HiFinder Tech Talks. Now, with over 25 trillion US dollars GDP, the US remains the world's largest economy. It is, besides that, still also among the top manufacturing economies in the world. So, what better place to put your hydrogen company? And that is what I want to talk about today at HiFinder Tech Talks with an expert in this field, where we're first going to look at the entire US scene and what is happening in there, and then a particular case study so that it gets a little bit more operational. So I'm very delighted that Brad Reams has decided to be with us today. He is an ex-city administrator. He's the director of Great Plains Industrial Park. That's what it's called. And Brad, what I like best is that you were a teacher in the past, sometime way back, but I know that's going to help us on this video to get the message across. Thank you very much for coming, Brad. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Stephen. It's great to be here. And yes, it is always nice to harken back to some of the days I was teaching people and was teaching geography. Now I'm teaching about hydrogen. So it's a great opportunity, and it's always good to be able to blend those skills together.
Perfect. So let's get right into it. What are the key things to consider when you are locating a company, a hydrogen-related company? And I am going to keep this conversation focused on hydrogen-related companies, but what are, on a very high level, things you have to consider when looking for a location?
Yeah, I think when you're looking, there's about 6 things you definitely want to highlight. And certainly power, water, and zoning are probably the 3 most important. You always want to land on either the feedstock side or the consumer side in a location. On the consumer side, you definitely have to look at that product, how you're going to transport it, where are you going to sell it to, and what's the governmental support, which we've seen has been pretty strong here in the United States.
Yes, that's true. Actually, recently, also with some legislation coming through, I've seen other countries saying that the US is now on the overtaking lane. Just in terms of, to make it understanding, what do you mean, with the power supply, water supply, and zoning? Just give us a little bit. Maybe start from zoning. What is? I wouldn't have had that on my list if you didn't put that on there. What is zoning?
Well, in zoning, it's what are you permitted to do? What business activity are you permitted to do in an area? And there are a lot of companies who want to land close to consumers, but maybe that land is not permitted to do the industrial activity. And so when you look at a hydrogen project, it's going to need to be in an industrial zone. And there are only so many of those near a population center. And so you're starting to see some of these projects laying closer to maybe the renewable power supply. And those are usually appropriate zones for industrial activity.
All right. Okay, good. And power supply, and I guess water supply, yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail. But I mean, when we're talking about the zoning, so if we just take the US, as huge as it is, and one tends to forget, to be honest, if you're not in the US, but when you look at the entire USA, yeah, where, are there different zones for different things? I know that Detroit was associated with motoring. When you talk about hydrogen, are there different zones in the US, and what's there to be considered?
Yes, I think if you look at this visual we're showing now, you have different zones of development for hydrogen that have their specialties. So you have the Gulf Coast that has a lot of pipelines and port access. You have access to natural, I would say, oil and gas refining areas in the central United States. In the northern United States, you might have a little bit more of the mobility hub. And so people want to use hydrogen for that. And then you have the coastal states, which have a little bit more of a green entity to them and governmental structure. So that's kind of the regional differences that you see. And then I would say if you look at hubs that have been designated by the U.S. government, these are the hubs that were designated for the $7 billion as production hubs.
Okay, so hubs defined by the U.S. government. Can you take us a bit closer on that? What does that mean?
So the Department of Energy and the Biden administration wanted to develop a hydrogen economy, and they we gave an option for different regions to submit proposals to become production hydrogen hubs.
Production
And
hubs. Okay. Mhm,
correct.
mhm.
And so most of these are multi-state efforts, not just one state, but California might be the exception, but most of these are states working together to produce hydrogen, but then also do distribution. They haven't always led to lots of consumption being listed, but I think that's in the near future.
Okay, so that means if I look at the top right corner, Mid-Atlantic Hydrogen Hub, it's essentially a region that will be offering, what will be different if I go there than if I went to, say, is it Nevada? That is that doesn't have a hub. As far as I see, look at this map, I'm not very firm on the U.S. states.
Correct. In those areas, you're going to see private-public partnerships that have, again, been given a chance by the government to earn a portion of the $7 billion to start projects. So what you're going to see also in this area is probably a higher concentration of educational partners.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about workforce development, research and development, that's going to be a higher concentration. Now, this isn't to say that you couldn't come to Kansas or someplace else and certainly be successful, but there's more federal money designated for these hubs.
Okay, all right, okay. So maybe talking about that central money, what kind of funding is available for companies, say an outsider that decided they want to come to the US, and where could they go to look for maybe additional money?
So as defined by hydrogen kind of funding searches that you would do as an outsider looking at the United States, listed on the screen are just some different departments that currently have funding available. So everything from the Department of Agriculture to even the U.S. Forestry Service have money available. And if you just search Inflation Reduction Act funding opportunities, you're going to come up with quite a few of these. This is not to say that there aren't separate Department of Energy kind of subsidiary funds. And quite honestly, I think one of the most amazing things about siting hydrogen projects right now is just the amount of money out there. We've gone from just looking at production hubs to now looking at money just for consumption. So they're trying to drive the consumption part of the economy as well.
Okay. So that means if not only if I'm setting up a site to actually produce, but I'm also looking to do something which will serve as an off-taker. And even if that means I am, I don't know, running a bus service or doing whatever needs energy which can be sourced from hydrogen, I can expect to benefit from these things as well.
Correct. That's a great statement. One of the things I think is interesting is you saw so much focus on production and not as much funding for consumption in the initial part. And now we have kind of an accordion where the production is ahead and then the consumption is coming in from the behind and catching up. And so as you stated, whether it be transportation, whether it be heavy equipment, whether it be power, those are areas that I think you're going to see quite a few of these consumption activities start to creep up because they know the hydrogen is available.
Yes. Okay. So maybe one last question to this. I mean, you have the Inflation Reduction Act, and I know that one can go. I think there's like videos for like an hour on them. But can you give us the Brad Reams short resume on the Inflation Reduction Act? What is that? And you get that from all those different departments that you've listed.
Yes. So what you have here is just saying these sub departments that you want to do something, let's say in the Department of Energy, right? And so you want to do a hydrogen boiler activity. You would submit your design and research and development project to the Department of Energy for funds. They do everything from grants to low interest loans. There's an LPO office, which does very low interest loans over the long term. Some of the most public projects have been in that LPO department, but they do have money to lend.
Yes.
I think you're seeing quite a push right now to get that money into the hands of developers.
Okay, cool. Well, okay, with these examples, and this is, I think, also the advantage of having you as a partner here is can you give us an example? Because I know you were in Kansas there, and just in terms of a case study. So imagine I wanted to now come. What could I expect? And maybe show us some examples of whatever you have to that.
So I think one of the things that you see here, this is a nice power to X strategy.
Yeah.
That if I'm an outside group coming into, say, for instance, Kansas, these are the things I want to see. I want to see the renewable opportunities. You see GPIP there at the top. You have some carbon emitting groups as well. And then the various offtakes are listed on the right-hand side, up to about 7 offtakes, everything from fertilizer to power. And so these are the things that people are wanting to see when they decide where to locate, because you have the renewables on one side, which is the feedstock, you have the consumables or the offtake, which is on the other side. And then in the middle, you see the various types of hydrogen production activities that can be completed.
So are you saying that, so when I come to Kansas, as the example, I get obviously I know what kind of company I run, but I'll just basically talk to you and see where I fit into this.
Yes, I think you would say, okay, I have a chemical plant. What type of hydrogen am I going to be able to get? What is my cost of power? So my LCOE, and how does that fit the current pro forma that I have?
Okay, and how does Kansas as a state particularly promote these activities there?
Well, one of the good things I think is we have a lot of renewable energy. Number one, we have a lot of transmission capacity, which isn't the same in every other area. The other thing I would say is that we have a very strong renewables incentives from the state level, but then we also can do some things at the local level as well. We actually currently have a bill in the legislature to promote EV and hydrogen freight and transportation equipment and incentives for those types of companies.
Okay. Oh, that's amazing. So, okay, but to a very practical sense, so imagine I was saying, okay, I had the idea of putting up a fertilizer facility. How would that work that I actually then now get connected to those who would supply me the necessary hydrogen, and how would it practically work to actually get it done?
So one of the first things that we would do, as we discuss with you, and that is your company, we would involve the Department of Commerce. We have a great international division that can work with companies from outside of the United States. They're very used to doing that. And then we also would work with the business development groups at the Department of Commerce to help you get connected with those specific companies. And so they have a Rolodex of all of their companies. They know who produces what. In this case, when you're talking about fertilizer, they would probably turn over to the Department of Ag and work with their colleagues in business development there to make sure that we can make the connection with your producing company and your consuming company.
Okay, cool. And then would you give me land, or, like, how would that be?
Sure. And honestly, that's one of the things that we can offer here at our park, is that we do things like land for jobs. That's something you see in the Midwest. You don't necessarily see that on the coast as much, where land is a lot higher priced and a lot more at capacity.
Yes.
So yes, we would look at what size of footprint do you need? We would figure out where that fits in the park. Then we would start working on an MOU, and then eventually to a lease or a lease purchase. And that's how we would start to coordinate those efforts.
So, Brad, I know you, it's okay talking about this, but I know you have some very practical things that you can show us. So please, can you show us some of the sites that you're actually talking about, so we can see what it feels like?
Yes, we'd love to do that, Stephen. So one of the first things that you will see is in this drone video is very good egress and ingress points from the exit and entry of the park, but also you're going to see some security. Most energy projects have to meet homeland security requirements. On both sides of the road, here you see two different types of power. You see the distribution power to step down, but you also see the entry power from a substation. And that's important to have that high power for your energy projects. On either side of the road, you're seeing water and sewer lines, obviously not visible, but planned there and in the ground, ready for a hydrogen project with water is extremely, of course, one of the ingredients. You're also seeing a very compact area, probably about 100 acres, pretty much for a large hydrogen site. That's very important. And because it's very compacted and all of the utilities are there, we can then put somebody in a place in about 6 months because of our expedited permitting. So all of those things are key to siting something in the park.
Yeah, and I see there's also flat land, and I mean, is the ground ready to be used? I don't know the actual terms, but sometimes they have to say, like, you have to do some boring or so. Or do you have all that available?
We do have all that available. And this location that we're showing has been a site where we had former structures, so all that ground's been prepared.
All
so
right.
again, it's as fast as you can go possibly in industrial development.
Okay. Okay. Wow. This is absolutely fantastic that you have all this. Maybe what I don't see there is that many people. Where would one find, the guys to make all this stuff work? I mean, in the end, you're going to need people. So can you maybe give us a word on that?
Sure. So I'll show you a little bit about our location. So from our point at about 1,000 miles, you can get into the East Coast, almost to Vegas, into Canada and centrally into Mexico for distribution. That works well. Where we are is kind of in the center of everything. That's what we like to say anyway. So you have less than 200 miles to about 6 MSAs. So we're able to bring in workers from, or at least 60 minutes away. And that is pretty normal and has been since the 40s when we were an ammunition plant.
Okay, so you have several municipalities or cities near. Okay, there we see the aerial picture again. So there's a population that can drive to these sites with no big problems.
Correct. It's pretty normal for people to drive up to 50 minutes to our location.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, that's true. I mean, okay, I can only say from my personal experience, it was a normal commute to take that long to work. But yeah, as long as you get good radio, super. And tell me now, also in terms of, if I'm an investor trying to do this, I'm probably thinking not. I probably enjoying the fact that I can get going quickly, but also in terms of outlook. So how's that? So thinking 10 years ahead, what are you guys planning for this area?
Well, we expect to put about 1,000 jobs in place in the next 10 years. This is a little bit more of our master use plan. We have a large solar array that's planned to be here. So there's some green energy opportunities here as well. We have rail access. But, back in the 40s, we had 6,700 workers here. Do I think we'll replicate that exactly? No. But it's the same story with a different chapter. We're adding green energy instead of ammunition, and so that's where we expect our ability to be able to grow back into our former self.
Wow, isn't that a beautiful story to go from ammunition to green energy? And I mean, you have rail access, which I think is fantastic, and I know there's also some rail companies much involved in development of vehicles and these kind of things. Just one other question: is there a pipeline or things thought about, like how does the transportation of the actual hydrogen around the place or away from the place work?
I think it will come in 3 different ways, quite honestly. I think you're going to see some move. Most popular in the United States right now is pipeline. Getting pipelines authenticated is sometimes a challenge, but I think you're seeing some of the former fossil fuel. I think you're seeing some of the former fossil fuel projects getting converted we have obviously tanker cars to move, say, for instance, methanol, which is a great hydrogen carrier out of the location. But also road freight. We're on a pretty popular highway, so you could move it out by 3 different ways, quite honestly.
Okay, wow. Okay, that's fantastic. I mean, just knowing where we stand now and knowing that you are in the conversion process, are there any things that you can already mention? Is there anyone there from the industry or something you'd like to highlight in that sense?
Now, currently, we don't have any hydrogen consumers or producers,
Yeah.
but in the next 2 years, we expect to land 2 producers, several consumers as well. And so we're in the process of finalizing some deals with those consumers. One group we've worked with since 2021. It's been a process of getting everything, again, highlighting that energy cost that is pretty volatile and can be pretty important to the pro forma of these companies. And so we're trying to make sure we have all of those things in place to make sure it's a great atmosphere.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Brett. I mean, our time has literally run, but I mean, we've gone from analyzing the entire US and now looking at a particular case study in your area in Kansas. This has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Brett, for coming to the Highfinder Tech Talks, and we hope to continue the conversation and also to present maybe some of the things that are being set up at some point in the future.
We would very much enjoy that, and we appreciate being a partner with you.
Thank you very much, Brad, and thank you guys for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure. I learned a lot about settling a company. Let's see. You can reach out to people like Brad if you want to settle your company in the US. And I've known you for a while now. I know that you're helpful in so many different respects. Thank you for watching, guys. And if you like the channel, please subscribe or say hi on any of our LinkedIn channels or social media around, and have a look at highfinder.com, where you can find a lot of components and things related to the hydrogen economy. Thank you very much, Brad. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day.